There's currently about 95 days until the NBA season's really about to start, and it gets into that preseason, almost regular season time. And a certain LeBron James, one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player of all time, depending on how you feel, is still a free agent, and he has completely free choice of where he would like to go. But he decided to limit his teams to about 10. Him and his agent, Rich Paul, and of course, Clutch Sports CEO, has included the 10 teams to a big board that was distributed to everybody during our podcast. Those 10 teams were the 76ers, the Cavaliers, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Miami Heat, the New York Knicks, the Warriors, Dallas Mavericks, Boston Celtics, and the San Antonio Spurs. So 10 teams all pretty much in a competing window, besides maybe the Mavericks, who are young, have a young Cooper Flag, and didn't really do that great that last year. And then you look at a team like the Miami Heat, who just signed just traded for Antetokounmpo. So that would be an insane front court. But let's look into team by team, and we'll decide who we think is the best look for LeBron James, what makes the most sense. I'll give my personal opinion on where I think he's going to go. Starting off here, we'll look at some of the cap spaces around the NBA, especially looking at some of the teams that he listed that he would like to go to and their current cap situation. Right now, the Golden State Warriors have the worst cap space in the NBA with negative 101 million, which is kind of crazy when you really think about it because their team is not that good and not that deep at all. But that is one of the teams that I think it is most obvious LeBron James might try to go to. Obviously, he wants to play with Stephen Curry, and him and Draymond are really good friends. So for one last year, he could end up in Golden State. But I don't know how most people would feel about that, considering all the, legacy he has of, the 2010s when the Cavs and the Warriors were going back and forth, back and forth. If LeBron James joined the Warriors, yes, it would be a decision for him. But in terms of how the NBA and how that reflects his image, I think it would shift quite a lot. I don't think I could really look at LeBron the same if he joined the Warriors. That would just be, I don't think that would be the best look for his career wise, but who am I telling LeBron James where to go, where he wants to play? The next team, though, is the Minnesota Timberwolves, which are negative 89 million in cap space. I'm sure these numbers are a little inflated because obviously I don't think any of these teams are that much over the cap space. The thing to really look at here is that the second apron's about 221 million. So pretty much they have a total cap space of 254. So they're about 30 million over the second apron, which is just, that's all on the owner on how much they're willing to tank there and pay, which, obviously I don't know how much Minnesota, that's not the biggest market, is going to be willing to pay, obviously, but it is LeBron James and it would do insane stuff. I think to put the salary cap stuff aside and to really think about it, where to really look, I would personally say there's about 5 or 6 teams that I could really see LeBron James going to out of the 10 that were listed. And I'm going to start off by talking about Philadelphia. I think there is a shot that LeBron could end up in Philadelphia. I think it would be a good fit for LeBron James. And I think, big market, big attraction. LeBron doesn't really have bad history with Philadelphia. I mean, sure, the fans. I think the biggest thing with LeBron there would be probably the fans in Philadelphia, if he would want to go there. Because, Philly fans, they're crazy. But you put in a starting lineup that looks something like Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Jaylen Brown, LeBron James, and Joel Embiid. That is a ridiculous, I think that's an incredible starting five there. And they do have the luxury of, the bench pieces to possibly put that together and make that a competent team. Anthony Simons, say what you want to say, but he's a good scorer. Emin Bono, I probably butchered his name right there, but he's a solid, backup center. He can, score a little bit, get some rebounds, play our defense. You got, of course, Dominic Barlow, who has been there for just last year, but he's been around the league a little bit. He had a pretty good year though last season with the 76ers to really help him out there and establish his place. They signed Dean Wade, who's it's Dean Wade. He's been on the Cavs for a while, so maybe there's that LeBron James connection. Justin Edwards didn't have as great as a second season as he was his first year, but he was on limited playing time not limited playing time, but he just wasn't playing as much. But I think he's still a solid player to come off the bench for the 76ers. LeBron, I just called him LeBron. LeBaron Phillip Jr., obviously, who they drafted with the 22nd overall pick in this year's draft out of Alabama. I think it'll be interesting to see how he's incorporated into this lineup. He was a great scorer at Alabama, and, he was even a better overall just point guard for Alabama. So I think he'll be a huge contributing factor, not to mention Maxi's already there, and Edgecombe in the starting lineup, as we already mentioned. So I would say Philadelphia makes a lot of sense here for LeBron James. And honestly, it's probably one of my more favorites to land LeBron James. They actually have a pretty good cap situation right now because LeBron said that he's open to signing for the minimum. They're at about $222 million right now. So they are just there at the second apron. They're not too far over it. And I honestly think Philadelphia makes probably the most sense out of most of these teams that I've looked at and where I think he would end up. The second team that I will get into is, I think, Cleveland. Now, yes, I think it would be kind of crazy to see LeBron go back to Cleveland a third time. I don't really know if that's going to happen, but in terms of how Cleveland is structured, the backstory there, and possibilities, I think Cleveland is an opportunity for LeBron to go there. If you looked at the starting lineup, I'd put him with James Harden and Donovan Mitchell, and then they would have good center play and forward play from Mobley and Allen. Put LeBron there in small forward. On the bench, they would have Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder does what he does. He's a good backup point guard. He's a good backup guard in general. I mean, he turned down a lot of money, though. He'll never forget that. Max Strus off the bench is a great hustle effort player. And then, you got Jalen Tyson, who had a disappointing playoffs, but overall is a pretty good player, for the Cavaliers. They have, Naquan Tomlin there also off the bench. He played a lot more last year than he did his rookie year. He's just, kind of that backup forward for them in certain situations. And then Sam Merrill's also there. So I think, honestly, I could see LeBron going back to Cleveland, sort of, but I think it would be a little bit more of a stretch than, of course, like Philly. But I think in terms of like backstory, he's from Cleveland, he loves Cleveland. A third time, one last run in Cleveland would make sense in my opinion. And yeah, out of all the teams that I mentioned so far, besides Miami, but I'm going to be honest, I don't see him going to Miami. I don't think that would work out with him, Giannis, and Bam. I just don't think Miami would be a good landing spot. Of course, Cleveland would be the only place that he's been at before. So I think for that aspect, you have to look at it that way. It's a familiar place for LeBron. The third team that I think LeBron has a decent shot of going to is Denver. Now, Denver, obviously, not the biggest market, and they are, $30 million above the second apron. So cap-wise and financially wise, it would be a bit of a stretch. But in terms of the fit, Nikola Jokic, LeBron James, Jamal Murray, healthy Aaron Gordon, and Cam Johnson off the bench, maybe Christian Braun off the bench. That's a scary lineup. I think offensively wise, the fundamental stuff there would be a great fit for LeBron James. Playing in Denver though, with his old age, the altitude might not be the best, but you pair LeBron James and Jokic up together for a year, I feel like that's scary, even though LeBron, of course, is 42, but he's LeBron James, for crying out loud. Put some respect on his name. He is still easily a top 20 player in the NBA, top 25. You cannot disrespect him in that aspect. And this lineup would be a very good, I think, starting lineup here. I mean, obviously they'd have to work down the lineup. They got Payne Watson off the bench, who, of course, is huge for Denver. He obviously was injured a lot, and that played a key part in the postseason last year because he didn't even play in the postseason because he was injured out of the regular season. But Peyton Watson is huge for Denver, so if he's healthy, that's going to help them out a ton. You obviously look at Christian Braun, who had a very disappointing season, and they're paying him a lot of money. You could look into seeing Christian Braun maybe getting moved, maybe getting some sort of contract negotiation or something, because I think he's going to be the big part here. If LeBron would end up in Denver, I think Christian Braun probably gets moved just because of his contract, and he was really disappointing last year. And I could really just see LeBron taking a chance here in Denver. I think playing with Jokic is probably something that he would want to do. Same thing with like our team I'm going to get with later into the video. But I could see him ending up here in Denver. And I think that would honestly be a pretty good fit for LeBron James. The next team I'm going to get into is the Boston Celtics, who obviously just made that trade for Jaylen Brown, which didn't go down well with a lot of people. But the main reason why I got the Celtics here is they're under the second apron, and they got flexibility for if LeBron James came and played for them. Their starting lineup would be Derek White, Paul George, LeBron James, Tatum, Robinson. That's a really good starting lineup, and not even to mention off the bench, Payton Pritchard. I don't like Payton Pritchard personally. Something about the guy, he just doesn't, it just strikes me, but he is a former Sixth Man of the Year. He could have won it last year too. They gave it to Keldon Johnson. Say what you want to say, don't really care. But he's a great player off the bench for Boston. Sam Hauser, when he feels like it, can knock down the 3-pointers. You got Jordan Walsh, who's progressed every year. They got Mike Conley there too. I think, the Celtics in terms of fit wise would also be a good spot for LeBron James. The big question, just like how Phillies fans were, going to be a problem for LeBron, Boston's fans definitely aren't going to be any better than Philly fans. And that would be a big deciding factor in if LeBron James would end up there. But I think, you look at how this team would be orchestrated, how Joe Mazzulla, obviously a coach, I think him and LeBron would probably maybe not see the greatest together, but I think Boston's a good fit here for LeBron. And it's not like, obviously there's been some crazy series in the past, them when he was in Miami, when he was in Cleveland, there is beef there with Boston. So I don't know if that's exactly how the fans would feel about it. But I think with Boston being one of the teams he mentioned, I think you got to look out for Boston as a potential shot of him landing there. The next team I'm going to talk about is obviously going to be the Golden State Warriors. Now, of course, Golden State, contract-wise, is cooked, but they are known to be spending well over the amount that they are allowed to. Their owner will tank it. The fit. Curry, LeBron, it's perfect. It would work so well on so many ways. I would probably hate it, but I'd probably love it at the same time to watch that be executed out there on the court. I think it would be quite the scene to see a LeBron James in a Golden State Warriors jersey. Now let's talk about the backlash he would receive. Personally, if I was a Cleveland Cavaliers fan and I seen LeBron sign with the Warriors, I would feel a type of way about that. I simply would. After all the, the things that happened in, from 2015 to 2018, I don't know how LeBron James signing with the Warriors would really do anything good for his career unless they won a championship. This would be basically off of LeBron James just wanting to play with Stephen Curry and Draymond, because obviously someone like Jimmy Butler will not be playing next year with the torn ACL. I'd be very doubtful that somebody at Jimmy Butler's age can play, in my opinion, which that might be what it comes down to. He might sign with the Warriors just because what he wants to do at this point. He's LeBron James. He can do whatever he really wants at this point. Fit wise, you got Pods, you got Porzingis there if he's ever going to be healthy. They obviously got Yaxel in the draft from Michigan, and it's not a great team. So personally, if LeBron wants to win a championship one last time, I don't think signing with the Warriors would be the best option, even though it'd probably be where he would have the most fun at, just so he could play with Curry. I think the Warriors or like a dark horse. It's not a dark horse because it's obvious that everybody knows he wants to play with Curry and Draymond, but it's obvious they're not a good team and LeBron wants to win a championship. So when you look at it from that external factors, I don't know how him signing with the Warriors would really be the best opportunity to win that championship. But he can do whatever he wants to do. And also, in terms of how they are with the cap space, I think it would be hard. But again, LeBron, he can do what he wants, and we'll just have to see where he decides to pick out of that. Which leads to the last team that I could possibly see LeBron James going to is going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves, who obviously just made that big trade for LaMelo. And they are also another team that is struggling financially. They're over 30 million over, which I talked about in the beginning of the second apron. But in terms of LeBron, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, and Jaden McDaniels just seems unbelievably right. At the same time, it seems wrong, but it just seems so right at the same time. I feel like a team of LaMelo and LeBron, Jaden McDaniels, and Rudy Gobert. Oh my goodness, that's a scary team there in Minnesota. Obviously, they have experience here in the playoffs recently. LeBron got swept by the Timberwolves not too long ago. That was 2 years ago. And wow, I don't know how I'd feel about this. This is my dark horse pick. I think Minnesota's my dark horse pick. I'm not going to pick them, but if he does go to Minnesota, I mean, they got Terrence Shannon Jr. off the bench, who was a dog at Illinois. He was going crazy in the playoffs. They got Ayo Dosunmu, who dropped a 40-pointer in the playoffs. They got a bunch of pieces on this team. And I think if he signs with Minnesota, I think it'd be a perfect opportunity for him to win that championship. Even as a Thunder fan, I think this Minnesota team would be crazy, and they're definitely my dark horse to sign LeBron. I honestly, like, there's something about it, just, I think I would really like to see LeBron in Minnesota personally. I think that would be so cool, and it'd just be such an opportunity to, I mean, him and Ant that'd just be cinema. It would just be peak cinema. And yeah, so those are the 5 to 6 teams. So obviously it was Philly, Cleveland, Denver, Boston, Minnesota, and Golden State. Out of those teams, my personal pick on where I think LeBron's going to end up is going to be Philadelphia. I think he's going to go to the 76ers. Personally, I think that's where the best fit for him. I think that would be the best opportunity for him. And I think that team would definitely be immediately the favorite in the East. Is another thing is you got to look at like the East versus the West comparisons here. If he signs in the East, automatically whatever team he goes to is already going to be a top 3 team. And I think you look at Philadelphia, they're going to be a top 3 team, which kind of is what limits Cleveland for me. I don't know if they've got the best potential compared to a team like Philly or Boston to really compete against a team like the Knicks too, who just won. And so that's Cleveland, honestly, out of all the teams I mentioned, is probably the one at the bottom for me. I'd probably put them at the 6 or 5 spot. Besides Philly, I think the next 2 teams would be either Boston or Minnesota for me. I could see them going either of those spots. And then I'd probably go Denver, Golden State. So we'll see what happens with LeBron James. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And let's hope that he becomes a 76er for my personal opinion. But if he doesn't go to the 76ers, let me see him in that Minnesota Timberwolves jersey.